Hey guys, welcome back to my chat room. We're chatting today. There's somebody so loud outside right now. Somebody's child is screaming. I'm going to be talking about a killer monster behind anxiety. Something that I have lived with. Hopefully this resonates with somebody. This monster hiding underneath anxiety. We know so many people have anxiety these days. And while we know that fear has a lot to do with anxiety, there's another thing that hit my mind that I have been working through, and it is called perfectionism. And man, that thing, that'll kill you. That will take you out. Now, there is still the fear underneath the perfectionism, but I definitely wanted to talk about the perfectionism because some people really don't realize the perfectionism that exists inside of them. I literally have been one of those people that did not realize the perfectionism, because the way I've seen perfectionism on TV or it's always this person that's always doing, like, they're at the top of their game, they top performer, they stand out, they're always getting straight A's, or, it's always tied to some layer of success. And I never really realized my perfectionism because it kind of hid in a different way, but it did produce a lot of anxiety. A little bit of my backstory. My idea of not having the perfect household, having a loving mom and having a dad and everything like that, but, having some things in the household that were not always great, didn't have a perfect family. And my stepdad was also up and down, right? I felt like I needed to be up tier in order to be accepted and received. So I would be trying to make sure that I behaved the best, did the best. I really tried in that way to have that acceptance, to earn, right? So that's kind of how how I believe my perfectionism really developed and became almost like a coping, a way to cope with the situation in the home, was to be my best. How the anxiety started to come into play, as you can probably guess, is that if I couldn't do it right? If I didn't aim for and try to do my best, and it wasn't because it was from a healthy space, it was from an unhealthy space of just trying to cope with my situation, I started to develop anxiety. There's a lot of fear behind not being able to get that, because I want to be accepted, right? I want to be fully loved, fully accepted. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychiatrist or nothing like that, but these are just things that I've noticed with myself, and I've seen them with other people, kind of talk to other people about their stories as well. I noticed that I started to develop a sense of, if I can't do it perfectly, I'm not going to do it. That is such that just stunts every piece of growth that you could possibly develop in life. Because in order to be good at something, you've got to be bad at it first. In order to get there, you've got to be bad at it. And, I've spoken about accountability in a previous video, and I will link that, but this fear of not being perfect at what you do is literally going to stop you from stepping anywhere, from getting anywhere in your life. It is such a paralyzing attack that there's no person on this planet that has been born, and we all have abilities, right? I believe that people can be born with talents and they can have these spiritual abilities and things like that. You know, you may have potential. You may have something that, you know, needs to be developed, but it has to be developed. And in order for you to really get great at something, you have to be willing to fall. You have to be willing to fall and get back up and fall and get back up. I even heard this one guy from a podcast say that the only thing different from like the successful person and the unsuccessful person was the fact that the successful person just failed and got up one more time. You know, they just got up one more time. And so they had to be able to accept this idea of failing, this idea of not being great in order to get there. And it's such a paralyzing feeling, and it does produce a lot of anxiety that really holds you back from being able to move forward and see the blessings and see the things that really God has for you on your life. This is just something that stood out to me, that this is really a killer. Like, this is a thief. When you really have something on your life, that tends to be when you get attacked the most, in my opinion. So I just don't want, if you have this, if you're scared to try because you're scared to fail, if you know that you have a perfectionist type of thing about you, and you know, I do want to say one other thing, that when it comes to perfectionism, there's a lot of pride that develops in that. There's a lot of pride and a lot of judgment that develops in having a perfectionism type of spirit, because you are so critical of yourself. You're so critical. And maybe at one point you had to be, but boy, typically the way that we treat ourselves is the way that we treat others. So if you're really critical of yourself and you're really judgmental of yourself, you're typically going to be pretty judgmental and critical of others, even if you don't outwardly say it. That can make you very hard on yourself. And the thing that I discovered to really, it was so simple, but in my experience, this is something that really led me to grow and to develop my relationship with God, my relationship with Jesus. It was the fact that I kept beating myself up all the time. And when you are a perfectionist, you will do that. You'll find something wrong. You can't forgive yourself. You can't move on. You'll get stuck in a pattern of being just very critical. I actually learned through this book, and I will link it below because it was such a huge life shift for me, and it was called the OCD healing journey, I believe, OCD healing journey. And it talked about just kind of like the obsessive compulsive disorder that you kind of develop when you're, you know, these patterns of thinking are like a sign of OCD. I noticed after that I was like, wow, I am a perfectionist. Like, I am very critical of myself. Why is it so hard for me to move on if I make a mistake? Or why do I judge myself so hard? Like, why am I so, like, gosh, it's kind of like hard to live this way. And you start to wake up and realize, it's a tough way to live when you're so critical of yourself. God brought me to two things. He brought me to two things. And this was about 6 months, about half a year, that I was like living in just this alone. This is all God would have me read about. This is all I was just centering myself with. And that is love and grace. When I say it now, it makes me smile, because every single time I would try to go back to this, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to be loving with myself, but I'm not doing it right? Even in that, I was having this perfectionism getting to me, this anxiety, this fear, this overwhelming fear. And he would just remind me and say, love, I love you. Love and grace, love and grace. So I started reading about his love, and I started reading about grace and what it meant, and really just drowning myself in love and grace. And that transformed. It didn't make me perfect because I'm not perfect, but I do want to say that it just opened my eyes. It took so many scales off of my eyes as to, wow, there's a struggle of unconditionally loving myself. There is this separation of grace that God unconditionally loves me. He gives me grace. Who am I not to give myself grace and love, right? And these things, like, God just started to show me so many things and put so many things on my heart that they really transformed. It was like a light bulb. It was such an enlightening moment for me that I started to understand, like, wow, people have to be taught and guided from a sense of love, of unconditional love and grace. You will be more forgiving naturally. You'll be more loving naturally. You will be more loving to yourself, more graceful to yourself, because you're really accepting this unconditional love. Especially us in the church and things like that, we can develop very OCD-like behaviors and not really know why we're doing things. And I'm sure, and I have met a lot of people that just, which is why they end up finding their own relationship and they go through their own trials and they go through their own journeys. And it's important for everyone to have their own journey. It's important because I can't tell you anything. A lot of us have to experience things. If you guys are experiencing that type of perfectionism, or if there's anything that I have said that has pricked a thought in your mind or in your heart, or anything that is you can relate with or share, please feel free to share those things down in the comments. A lot of us don't even realize that some of the times the reason why we're so critical of ourselves is because we just don't know how to love ourselves. And therefore, we don't know how to love others. And that's just kind of how that goes. Love is just the answer, man. Like, I hate to sound cliche, but that love and that grace is so powerful. So guys, thank you so much for joining me today on this conversation. I hope that it was helpful to at least one of you guys. If you would like to leave a comment below, please do share and let's talk in the comments, and I will see you next time. Bye.